In the heart of a desolate landfill on the outskirts of Detroit, a faint and vulnerable cry pierces the morning silence. Noah, a 1-year-old baby, lies alone among mountains of debris, his delicate skin marked by the harsh sun and grime. Despite the dire circumstances, his large, curious eyes reflect an innocence that stands in stark contrast to the harshness surrounding him. The early autumn sun casts long shadows across the wasteland, where seagulls circle overhead, their wings catching glints of light. Noah's tiny fingers grasp at a discarded piece of fabric, once a bright yellow blanket, now dulled by dirt and exposure. His dark curls, matted with sweat, frame a face that somehow maintains its cherubic quality despite the desperate situation. Around him, the landscape stretches like an apocalyptic canvas. Towering heaps of refuse create an artificial horizon, while the distant city skyline serves as a cruel reminder of the civilization that seems to have forgotten this corner of existence. The air carries the acrid smell of decay, occasionally broken by gusts of wind that stir up clouds of dust and scattered debris. Noah's clothes, mismatched and worn, tell their own story of neglect. His red t-shirt, 3 sizes too big, hangs off one shoulder, while his cotton pants are secured with what appears to be a shoelace. Yet, there's a resilience in his demeanor that defies his circumstances. Every few minutes, he pulls himself up using nearby objects, determined to stand despite the unstable ground beneath him. The sounds of the landfill create an eerie symphony, the creaking of settling garbage, the rustle of paper caught in the wind, and the occasional clang of metal shifting in the breeze. Noah seems to have developed an unusual comfort with these sounds, turning his head with curiosity rather than fear when a particularly loud noise erupts from somewhere in the wasteland. Throughout the morning, he demonstrates an extraordinary adaptability that only children seem capable of possessing. He's learned to avoid the sharper edges of his surroundings, crawling with surprising agility across the treacherous terrain. His hands, though dirty, move with purpose as he explores his immediate environment, occasionally finding small treasures. A plastic bottle cap becomes a toy, a piece of cardboard transforms into a temporary shelter from the sun. The question of how he arrived here hangs heavy in the air. There are no signs of adult presence, no indication of a camp or temporary shelter. It's as if he materialized from the waste itself, though the reality must be far more tragic. His survival thus far seems nothing short of miraculous, a testament to human resilience even in its youngest form. As noon approaches, Noah's movements become more subdued. The heat bears down mercilessly, and his attempts to find shade become more urgent. He crawls beneath the shadow of a large piece of corrugated metal, his breathing steady but labored. His eyes, though tired, remain alert, scanning his surroundings with an awareness that seems beyond his years. The landfill workers, visible in the distance with their bright yellow vests, remain unaware of his presence. Their machinery creates a constant background rumble, and occasionally the ground trembles beneath Noah as trucks dump their loads in other sections of the vast waste site. He's learned to stay hidden in this corner of the landfill, instinctively understanding that survival depends on remaining unnoticed. What's most striking about Noah is not just his physical survival, but the spark of life that refuses to dim in his eyes. Even as he sits alone in this wasteland, his face occasionally breaks into a smile at simple things, a butterfly landing nearby, the dance of a plastic bag in the wind, or the distant echo of birds calling. It's as if his young spirit refuses to acknowledge the gravity of his situation, finding wonder in a world that has shown him nothing but abandonment. As Noah watches the birds soaring overhead, a movement in his peripheral vision catches his attention. Through the hazy afternoon light, a thin figure emerges, a weathered horse, its ribs visible beneath a dusty brown coat, approaches with cautious steps. The animal, whom Noah will come to know as Hope, moves with a gentle determination that belies her emaciated state. Hope's coat, once a rich chestnut color, has faded to a dull brown, marked by patches of wear and neglect. Her mane, tangled with bits of debris, still maintains a certain grace as it catches the breeze. Despite her obvious hardships, her eyes hold a warm intelligence, scanning the area with the wisdom of a creature who has known both kindness and cruelty. The first encounter between the unlikely pair unfolds with remarkable tenderness. Hope approaches Noah with the delicacy of a mother checking on her foal, her nostrils flaring slightly as she takes in his scent. The baby, showing no fear, extends his tiny hand toward her velvet muzzle. Their eyes meet, his bright with wonder, hers soft with understanding, forming a connection that transcends the barriers of species. As the afternoon progresses, Hope positions herself strategically near Noah, creating a shield between him and the harsh elements. Her body casts a long shadow that provides welcome relief from the relentless sun. When the wind picks up, carrying with it the acrid smell of the landfill, she shifts her position to block the worst of the dust and debris from reaching the child. Their communication develops its own unique language. Noah's babbles are met with soft nickering sounds from Hope, her ears twitching forward whenever he makes a sound. When he attempts to stand, wobbling on uncertain legs, she remains perfectly still, allowing him to grip her foreleg for support. The trust between them grows with each passing hour, their bond strengthening in the silence of their shared solitude. Hope's protective instincts manifest in subtle ways. When the rumble of garbage trucks grows too close, she positions herself between the noise and Noah. Her ears constantly move, radar-like, tracking any potential threats. At one point, when a stray dog ventures too close to their corner of the landfill, Hope's gentle demeanor shifts momentarily. A single pawing of her hoof and a warning snort are enough to send the intruder retreating. The horse's presence brings unexpected gifts to Noah's world. Her body heat provides warmth as the afternoon turns to evening, and the rhythm of her breathing becomes a soothing lullaby. She seems to understand instinctively when he needs comfort, lowering her head to nuzzle him gently when his eyes fill with tears of hunger or discomfort. Their survival becomes intertwined. Hope manages to find patches of scraggly grass growing between the mounds of garbage, and her searching leads them to a small stream of relatively clean water trickling through the wasteland. She waits patiently as Noah crawls alongside her, matching her pace to his, ensuring he's never left behind. As dusk approaches, Hope demonstrates an almost supernatural awareness of Noah's needs. When he grows tired, she carefully lowers herself to the ground, creating a protected space between her body and a stable pile of debris. Noah instinctively curls up in this natural shelter, his small hand resting against her warm flank. Their nights develop a routine. Hope remains alert while Noah sleeps, her ears constantly moving, her body tensing at any unusual sound. The baby's sleep, once fitful and interrupted, becomes deeper and more peaceful in the presence of his guardian. Even in slumber, he maintains physical contact with her, as if reassuring himself of her continued presence. The transformation in both of them becomes evident as days pass. Noah's movements grow more confident under Hope's watchful eye, and her own demeanor shifts from that of a dejected castaway to a purposeful protector. They share moments of unexpected joy, Noah's delighted giggles when Hope's breath tickles his neck, her gentle whickering when he successfully stands on his own. In the harsh reality of the landfill, their unlikely partnership creates a pocket of warmth and security. Hope's presence transforms what was merely survival into something approaching life, her steadfast companionship providing Noah with the emotional sustenance as vital as food or water. Together, they create their own definition of family, bound not by blood but by the pure, unconditional love that can flourish even in the most desolate circumstances. The dawn breaks over the landfill, casting long shadows across the detritus-strewn landscape. As the first rays of sunlight pierce through the haze, two figures appear on the horizon. Jack and Mike, both in their mid-30s, make their way through the maze of garbage heaps, their fluorescent vests a stark contrast to the muted tones of the wasteland. They're part of a new initiative to clean up and rehabilitate the area, a project born out of growing environmental concerns and community pressure. Jack, with his weathered face and calloused hands, has the look of a man who's seen his fair share of hardship. His eyes, a deep blue, carry a warmth that belies his rough exterior. A former construction worker, he found himself drawn to environmental causes after witnessing the impact of unchecked development on his hometown. Now, he approaches his work with the zeal of a convert, each piece of trash removed feeling like a personal victory against the tide of waste. Mike, on the other hand, presents a stark contrast to his co-worker. Younger by a few years, with wire-rimmed glasses and a perpetual furrow in his brow, he carries himself with the air of an academic thrust into an unfamiliar world. A recent environmental science graduate, this job is his first foray into fieldwork, and his enthusiasm is tempered by a constant undercurrent of anxiety. Every step through the unstable terrain is taken with caution, his clipboard clutched tightly to his chest like a shield. As they make their way deeper into the landfill, their conversation reveals the complexities of their lives beyond this wasteland. Jack speaks of his daughter's upcoming school play, his voice softening as he describes her excitement. Mike, in turn, shares his struggles with student loans and his parents' skepticism about his career choice. Their dialogue, punctuated by the crunch of debris underfoot, paints a picture of two men from different worlds, united by a common purpose. The morning progresses, and their work falls into a rhythm. Jack's experience shines through as he efficiently sorts through piles, separating recyclables from true waste. Mike, clipboard in hand, meticulously records their findings, his initial hesitation giving way to a growing confidence. They share a sense of camaraderie, finding moments of levity in their grim surroundings, a joke about a particularly bizarre piece of trash, a friendly competition to see who can fill their bag faster. It's just past noon when their routine is shattered. A sound, so out of place in this lifeless landscape that at first they think they've imagined it, stops them in their tracks. A cry, unmistakably that of a baby, echoes across the waste field. Jack and Mike exchange a look of disbelief before springing into action, their movements now charged with urgency. They follow the sound, scrambling over mounds of garbage, their hearts pounding with a mix of anticipation and dread. As they crest a particularly large heap, the scene before them stops them cold. There, in a small clearing amidst the chaos, is a sight that defies belief. A baby boy, no more than a year old, huddled against the protective form of a thin, but alert horse. The tableau before them is both beautiful and heartbreaking. Noah, his face streaked with dirt but his eyes bright, clings to Hope's leg. The horse stands perfectly still, her posture protective, eyes locked on the newcomers. The bond between the unlikely pair is palpable, a silent testament to their shared ordeal. Jack is the first to react, his paternal instincts overriding his shock. He takes a step forward, his voice soft as he tries to soothe both child and animal. Mike, however, remains frozen, his mind racing through the legal and ethical implications of what they've discovered. His clipboard, once so important, now hangs forgotten at his side. As Jack slowly approaches, Hope's ears flick back, her body tensing. She lets out a low nicker, a sound that's both a warning and a plea. Noah, sensing the change in his protector, buries his face against her leg, his small body trembling. The delicate balance of trust and survival that the pair has established is suddenly under threat. Jack stops, recognizing the fragility of the situation. He turns to Mike, his voice urgent but controlled. "We need to call this in, get some help out here. But we can't just leave them." Mike nods, fumbling for his phone, his training warring with the emotional reality before him. As Mike steps away to make the call, Jack sinks to his knees, maintaining a safe distance from Hope and Noah. He begins to speak, his voice low and soothing, a stream of reassurances meant as much for the horse as for the child. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the tension begins to ease. Hope's ears swivel forward, her eyes, though still wary, show a glimmer of understanding. Mike returns, his face pale. They're sending a team. Animal control, child services, the works. They said not to approach them, to wait for the professionals. His voice trails off as he looks at the scene before him, the textbook response feeling woefully inadequate. Jack nods, but makes no move to retreat. Instead, he begins to sing softly, an old lullaby his grandmother used to sing. The gentle melody drifts across the wasteland, a stark contrast to the harsh environment. Gradually, Noah's grip on Hope loosens, his curiosity overcoming his fear. He peeks out, his eyes meeting Jack's. As the minutes stretch into an hour, a fragile trust begins to form. Hope allows Jack to inch closer, her instincts seemingly recognizing a kindred spirit in this gentle giant of a man. Noah, emboldened by his guardian's acceptance, extends a small hand towards Jack, a tentative bridge across the divide. The sound of approaching vehicles breaks the spell. Hope's head snaps up, her body once again tense and ready to flee. Noah, sensing her distress, begins to whimper. Jack and Mike exchange a look of panic. After coming so far, they can't bear the thought of these two being separated or further traumatized. In that moment, Jack makes a decision that will change all their lives. With a nod to Mike, he slowly stands, his movements deliberate and non-threatening. "We can't let them take them away separately," he says, his voice firm with resolve. "Whatever happens, we need to keep them together. They're family now." Mike, his earlier hesitation replaced by determination, nods in agreement. As the vehicles approach, kicking up dust in the distance, the two men position themselves protectively near Hope and Noah. They've entered this wasteland as co-workers on a job, but they now stand united as advocates for this most unlikely of families, prepared to fight for a future where hope can truly bloom from the depths of despair. As the vehicles draw closer, the tension in the air becomes palpable. The whine of engines and crunch of tires on uneven ground grows louder, shattering the fragile peace that had settled over the small group. Hope's ears flick back and forth, her muscles twitching beneath her weathered hide as she fights the instinct to flee. Noah, sensing the change in his protector, clings tighter to her leg, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and curiosity. Jack and Mike exchange a glance, silently reaffirming their commitment to keeping Noah and Hope together. They position themselves strategically, Jack closer to the pair, his body language open and non-threatening, while Mike stands slightly ahead, ready to intercept the approaching officials. The first to arrive is a police cruiser, its lights flashing but siren mercifully silent. Officer Sarah Thompson steps out, her hand resting instinctively on her holster as she surveys the scene. Her eyes widen as she takes in the unlikely tableau before her: a baby, a horse, and two cleanup workers forming a protective circle amidst the waste. "Gentlemen," she calls out, her voice firm but not unkind, "I'm going to need you to step away from the child and the animal." Her training kicks in, years of protocol warring with the unprecedented nature of the situation. Mike steps forward, his earlier hesitation replaced by a surprising assertiveness. "Officer," he begins, his voice steady, "we understand the protocol, but this is a unique situation. The child and the horse, they're bonded. Separating them could be traumatic for both." As if to underscore his point, Noah lets out a small whimper, burying his face against Hope's leg. The horse responds by lowering her head, gently nuzzling the boy's hair. The gesture is so tender, so unmistakably nurturing, that even Officer Thompson pauses, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Before she can respond, more vehicles arrive. A van from Child Protective Services pulls up, followed closely by Animal Control. The quiet standoff suddenly becomes a flurry of activity as officials pour out of their vehicles, each with their own agenda and protocol to follow. Linda Chen from CPS approaches, her face a mask of professional concern. "We need to get that child to a hospital for evaluation immediately," she insists, reaching for Noah. Hope reacts instantly, placing herself between the boy and the newcomer, her teeth bared in a silent warning. Jack intervenes, his voice low and soothing. Please. Let's take this slow. They've been through enough trauma already. We don't want to make it worse." The animal control officers, led by a gruff man named Frank Miller, are eyeing Hope with a mixture of wariness and calculation. "That horse needs to be sedated and transported to a facility for evaluation," Miller states flatly, reaching for his tranquilizer gun. It's at this moment that Noah, overwhelmed by the commotion, begins to cry in earnest. His wails cut through the tension, a stark reminder of the vulnerable life at the center of this unfolding drama. Hope responds immediately, lowering herself to the ground and curling her body protectively around the boy, creating a living barrier between Noah and the crowd of adults. The scene freezes for a moment, the raw emotion of the child's cries and the horse's protective gesture striking a chord with everyone present. Even the most hardened officials find themselves moved by the obvious bond between this unlikely pair. Jack seizes the moment, his voice carrying a quiet authority. "Look," he says, addressing the group, "I know we all have jobs to do here. But what we're seeing isn't just a case to be processed or a problem to be solved. This is a miracle, a child and an animal who found each other in the darkest of places and formed a bond that's kept them both alive. We can't just tear that apart because it doesn't fit into our usual procedures." Mike chimes in, his academic background lending weight to his words. There's substantial research on the therapeutic benefits of animal companionship, especially for children who've experienced trauma. Separating them now could cause significant psychological harm to both the child and the horse. Officer Thompson, who's been quietly observing, steps forward. "All right," she says, her tone measured, "let's take a step back and approach this rationally. The priority is the well-being of the child and the animal. We need to get them both medical attention, but perhaps we can do it in a way that doesn't separate them." Linda from CPS nods slowly, her professional concern warring with her human empathy. "We could potentially arrange for a veterinarian to accompany us to the hospital. If the horse is deemed healthy enough to transport, we could keep them together during the initial evaluation." Frank from Animal Control looks skeptical but doesn't object outright. "It's not standard procedure, but I suppose we could make an exception given the circumstances. We'll need to ensure the safety of hospital staff and other patients, of course." As the adults' discussion continues, Jack kneels down next to Hope and Noah. The horse's eyes meet his, and in that moment, he feels a profound connection to this brave creature who's defied all odds to protect an abandoned child. Noah, his cries now subsided to sniffles, peers out from the safety of Hope's embrace, his tiny hand reaching out to Jack. With gentle movements, Jack edges closer, speaking softly to both Noah and Hope. "It's going to be okay," he murmurs, not sure if he's trying to convince them or himself. "We're going to keep you together. I promise." The next few hours unfold in a whirlwind of activity. A horse trailer is procured, modified to allow Hope to travel safely while keeping Noah within sight. A pediatrician and a veterinarian are called to the scene, performing preliminary checks before giving the green light for transport. Throughout it all, Jack and Mike remain constant presences, advocating fiercely for Noah and Hope's well-being. They ride in the transport vehicles, their familiar faces and voices providing comfort amidst the chaos. As the unusual procession makes its way towards the city, the sun begins to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. The stark landscape of the landfill gives way to suburban streets, then to the bustle of the city proper. Passers-by stop and stare at the sight of a horse trailer accompanied by police escorts and a variety of official vehicles. At the hospital, a special area is cordoned off in the parking lot. Hope is led into a makeshift enclosure, while Noah is taken inside for a thorough examination. True to their word, the officials ensure that the two are never out of each other's sight, with large windows allowing Noah to see Hope at all times. As night falls, Jack and Mike find themselves in the hospital waiting room, exhausted but unwilling to leave. They've become unofficial guardians, fielding questions from curious staff and comforting Noah during the brief periods when he's separated from Hope. Linda from CPS approaches them, her face showing the strain of the unusual day. "We've managed to secure temporary guardianship for both Noah and Hope," she informs them. "They'll be transferred to a specialized foster care facility tomorrow that can accommodate both of them. It's not a permanent solution, but it will give us time to figure out the best long-term plan." Jack nods, relief washing over him. "Thank you," he says simply, the words carrying the weight of the day's emotional rollercoaster. As they watch Noah finally drift off to sleep, visible through the window of his hospital room, with Hope standing vigilant just outside, Mike turns to Jack. "You know," he says quietly, "when I took this job, I thought I'd be making a difference by cleaning up trash. I never imagined we'd end up saving a family." Jack smiles, his eyes never leaving the sleeping child. "Sometimes," he replies, "hope comes in the most unexpected packages. And sometimes, it's our job to make sure it has a chance to grow." The following day dawns with an ominous grey sky, heavy with the promise of an incoming storm. At the hospital, preparations are underway to transfer Noah and Hope to the specialized foster care facility. Jack and Mike, having spent a restless night in the waiting room, are helping with the arrangements, their faces etched with a mixture of exhaustion and determination. As they work, the first rumbles of thunder echo in the distance. Hope, still in her makeshift enclosure in the parking lot, grows visibly agitated. Her ears flick back and forth, and she paws at the ground nervously. Noah, watching from his hospital room window, picks up on her distress, his small face creasing with worry. Linda Chen from CPS hurries over, her phone in hand. "We've got a problem," she announces, her voice tense. The foster care facility is in a low-lying area, and they're under evacuation orders due to potential flooding. We need to come up with a new plan, fast. The news sends a ripple of concern through the group. Officer Thompson, who has stayed on to oversee the transfer, steps forward. What are our options? She asks, her tone brisk and professional. As if in response, a brilliant flash of lightning illuminates the sky, followed almost immediately by a deafening crack of thunder. The storm is no longer approaching, it has arrived. Hope rears up in her enclosure, whinnying in distress. Noah, seeing his protector's fear, begins to cry, reaching out towards the window. The sound of his wails cuts through the growing chaos, a stark reminder of the vulnerable lives at stake. Jack, his face set with determination, turns to the group. We can't wait this out, he says firmly. We need to move them now, before the storm gets worse. But where? Mike, who has been quietly listening, suddenly speaks up. My uncle has a farm about an hour north of here, he offers. It's on high ground, and he has experience with rescue animals. It's not an official facility, but it might be our best option right now. Linda hesitates, protocol warring with the urgency of the situation. It's not standard procedure, she begins, but Officer Thompson cuts her off. Nothing about this situation is standard, the officer points out. We need to prioritize their safety and well-being. If this farm can provide that, even temporarily, I think we should consider it. As they debate, the sky opens up, rain pouring down in sheets. The wind picks up, howling around the corners of the building and rattling the windows. Hope's distress grows, her movements becoming more frantic. Jack, seeing the horses panic, makes a decision. I'm going out there, he announces, already moving towards the exit. She needs a familiar face. Before anyone can stop him, Jack is out in the storm, making his way carefully across the slick parking lot to Hope's enclosure. The rain soaks him instantly, but he doesn't hesitate. Reaching the horse, he begins to speak to her softly, his hands gentle on her neck. Remarkably, Hope begins to calm under his touch. Her wild eyes focus on him, finding an anchor in the chaos of the storm. From his window, Noah watches intently, his own cries subsiding as he sees his protector relaxing. Inside, Mike is on the phone with his uncle, quickly explaining the situation. After a tense few minutes, he turns to the group, hope lighting up his face. He says we can bring them, Mike announces. He's clearing out a barn right now. It's not fancy, but it's warm, dry, and safe. Linda, seeing the worsening weather and the clear bond between Noah, Hope, and their unlikely guardians, finally nods her assent. All right, she says, her voice firm. Let's make this happen. But we do this by the book as much as possible. I want everything documented. What follows is a flurry of activity, all set against the backdrop of the raging storm. Noah is carefully bundled up, his wide eyes taking in the frantic preparations. Hope is led into the horse trailer, Jack by her side, speaking to her constantly to keep her calm. As they prepare to leave, another challenge presents itself. The roads leading north are becoming treacherous, with reports of flooding and debris. Officer Thompson, assessing the situation, makes a call. I'll lead the way, she announces, her voice leaving no room for argument. My cruiser can handle these conditions better than most. We'll take it slow and steady. And so, an unusual convoy sets out into the storm. Officer Thompson's police cruiser leads the way, its lights flashing through the curtain of rain. Behind it, the horse trailer carrying Hope, with Jack riding inside to keep her calm. Mike follows in his own car, with Linda from CPS and Noah securely strapped in. The journey is tense, with visibility reduced to mere feet in front of their vehicles. The wind buffets them mercilessly, and more than once, they have to navigate around fallen trees or deep puddles. Throughout it all, Jack keeps up a steady stream of soothing words to Hope, while in the car behind, Mike sings softly to Noah, trying to distract the child from the frightening conditions outside. As they drive further north, the landscape changes. The urban sprawl gives way to rolling hills and farmland. The storm, while still fierce, seems to lose some of its intensity as they climb to higher ground. After what feels like an eternity, but is in reality just over 2 hours, they turn onto a muddy lane. At the end, they can just make out the welcoming lights of a farmhouse, warm and steady against the gloomy sky. Mike's uncle, Tom is waiting for them on the porch, his weathered face creased with concern. As the vehicles pull to a stop, he hurries down, a large umbrella in hand. "Get them inside, quick," he calls out over the howling wind. The barn's ready for the horse. With practiced efficiency, they begin the process of unloading. Hope is led carefully from the trailer, her hooves sinking into the muddy ground. Despite the chaos around her, she seems calmer now, as if sensing they've arrived somewhere safe. Noah, bundled tightly in Jack's arms, peers out at his new surroundings with wide-eyed wonder. As Hope is led past him towards the barn, he reaches out a small hand, touching her wet flank. The horse pauses, turning her head to nuzzle the child gently before allowing herself to be led away. Inside the farmhouse, Tom's wife, Sarah, has prepared a warm welcome. Dry towels, hot drinks, and a crackling fire in the hearth await them. As they shed their wet outer layers, the adrenaline of the journey begins to wear off, leaving them all exhausted but relieved. Linda, ever the professional, begins the process of documenting everything, her fingers flying over her phone as she updates her superiors on the situation. Officer Thompson excuses herself to check in with her precinct, stepping out onto the covered porch to make her call. Jack and Mike, after ensuring Noah is settled, make their way to the barn to check on Hope. They find her already munching contentedly on fresh hay, the warm, dry space a far cry from her previous home in the landfill. As the night wears on, the storm begins to abate. The constant drumming of rain on the roof softens to a gentle patter, and the wind dies down to a whisper. In the living room of the farmhouse, Noah finally succumbs to sleep, curled up on a soft blanket near the fire. Jack and Mike, seated nearby, exchange a look of shared understanding. What started as a routine day at work has turned into something neither of them could have ever imagined. They've become part of something extraordinary, a story of unlikely bonds, unexpected challenges, and the resilience of both human and animal spirits. As the first light of dawn begins to creep over the horizon, painting the storm-washed sky in soft pinks and golds, there's a sense of new beginnings in the air. For Noah and Hope, their journey is far from over, but they've found a temporary haven. And for Jack and Mike, this experience has awakened something within them, a desire to see this through, to ensure that the miraculous bond they witnessed in that desolate landfill is given every chance to flourish. The days that follow the dramatic storm bring a flurry of activity to Tom and Sarah's farm. The once quiet homestead becomes the center of an unprecedented situation, attracting attention from various authorities, media outlets, and curious locals. Through it all, Noah and Hope remain the calm eye of the storm, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. As the sun rises on the first morning, Jack and Mike find themselves in the barn, watching as Noah toddles unsteadily towards Hope. The horse, ever patient, lowers her head, allowing the child to wrap his arms around her neck in a clumsy embrace. The sight brings smiles to both men's faces, a moment of pure joy amidst the uncertainty. Linda Chen from CPS arrives early, her face a mixture of professional concern and genuine interest. "We need to discuss long-term plans," she begins, but her voice trails off as she watches Noah giggle while Hope gently nuzzles his hair. Jack steps forward, his voice quiet but firm. "Before we start talking about separating them, I think we need to consider all options. This isn't just about finding a home for a child or a shelter for a horse. They're a package deal now." Mike nods in agreement, adding, "There's growing research on the therapeutic benefits of animal companionship, especially for children who've experienced trauma. What we're seeing here, it's special. We can't ignore that." Linda listens, her expression thoughtful. "You're right, of course. But we're in uncharted territory here. There's no precedent for this kind of situation in our system." As they discuss, Tom approaches, wiping his hands on a worn cloth. "You know," he interjects, "Sarah and I have been talking. We've got the space here, and we're no strangers to taking in those who need help. If you need time to figure things out, well, Noah and Hope are welcome to stay as long as necessary." The offer sends a ripple of relief through the group. It's not a permanent solution, but it buys them time to navigate the complex legal and ethical considerations of their unique situation. Over the next few weeks, the farm becomes a hive of activity. Social workers, child psychologists, and veterinarians come and go, all marveling at the extraordinary bond between boy and horse. Hope, once skinny and dejected, begins to regain her strength under Tom's expert care. Her coat regains its shine, and there's a new spring in her step as she trots around the paddock, always keeping a watchful eye on Noah. Noah, too, flourishes in this new environment. The quiet child they found in the landfill slowly gives way to a curious, giggly toddler. He babbles constantly, a mix of real words and his own secret language, often directed at Hope as if sharing private jokes. Jack and Mike, unable to simply walk away from the situation, find themselves spending every free moment at the farm. They take turns reading to Noah, teaching him new words and watching in amazement as he begins to mimic the sounds of the farm animals. Hope is never far, always within sight of her young charge, nickering softly when he calls her name. As the weeks turn into months, the legal complexities of the situation begin to unfold. Child Services grapples with the unprecedented nature of Noah's case, while animal welfare organizations debate the ethics of keeping a horse as a permanent companion to a child. Media interest grows, with reporters camped out at the end of the farm's driveway, eager for updates on the landfill miracle as the story has been dubbed. Through it all, Jack and Mike become unexpected advocates, tirelessly arguing for keeping Noah and Hope together. They attend meetings, pore over legal documents, and even start a social media campaign to raise awareness about the unique bond between child and horse. Their dedication doesn't go unnoticed. Linda, impressed by their commitment, begins to see them in a new light. "You know," she says one evening, as they watch Noah and Hope play in the fading sunlight, "have either of you considered fostering?" The question catches both men off guard. They exchange a look, years of friendship allowing for a silent conversation. It's Mike who finally speaks, his voice thoughtful. "We hadn't, but I think it's something we'd both be open to discussing." As autumn paints the farm in rich golds and reds, a breakthrough finally comes. A judge, moved by the overwhelming evidence of the positive impact Hope has on Noah's development, makes an unprecedented ruling. Noah will be placed in foster care, with the stipulation that Hope must be accommodated as his emotional support animal. The decision is met with a mix of relief and new challenges. Finding a foster family willing and able to take in both a child and a horse is no small task. But as news of the ruling spreads, offers begin to pour in from across the country. It's during this time that Jack and Mike make a life-changing decision. After long discussions with each other, their families, and the Child Services team, they decide to apply to become Noah's foster parents. The process is rigorous, involving home studies, background checks, and intensive training. The men throw themselves into it with the same determination they've shown throughout this entire journey. Tom and Sarah, having grown attached to Noah and Hope themselves, offer their full support, promising to help in any way they can. As winter approaches, bringing with it a blanket of snow that transforms the farm into a wonderland, the final pieces fall into place. Jack and Mike are approved as foster parents, with the provision that they'll move to a property that can accommodate Hope. The day of the move is bittersweet. Tom and Sarah, teary-eyed but smiling, help load Hope into a trailer specially designed for her comfort. Noah, bundled up against the cold, watches with wide eyes, his small hand clasped in Jack's. As they drive away, Mike at the wheel, Jack turns to look at Noah in the back seat. The boy is pressed against the window, waving goodbye to the farm that has been his temporary haven. But there's no fear in his eyes, only curiosity about the new adventure ahead. Their new home, a small ranch on the outskirts of town, is a far cry from the landfill where this journey began. Hope's new stable is warm and spacious, with a large paddock for her to roam. Noah's room, painted in cheerful yellows and blues, has a large window overlooking the pasture where Hope grazes. As they settle into their new life, the challenges are many. There are sleepless nights when Noah wakes crying from nightmares of his time alone, only soothed by the sight of Hope outside his window. There are moments of doubt, when the enormity of what they've taken on weighs heavily on Jack and Mike. But there are also moments of pure joy, Noah's first successful ride on Hope's back, his delighted laughter echoing across the fields, quiet evenings spent as a family, Noah nestled between Jack and Mike as they read him bedtime stories. Months turn into years, and the unusual family unit grows stronger. Noah, once a lost and silent child, blossoms into a confident, kind-hearted boy with a special affinity for animals. Hope, no longer just a protector, becomes a beloved member of the family, her gentle presence a constant source of comfort and joy. The story of the baby and the horse found in a landfill fades from the media spotlight, but its impact ripples outward. Child Services begins to look more closely at the role of animal companionship in foster care. Research into the therapeutic benefits of human-animal bonds receives increased funding and attention. As for Jack and Mike, their lives are forever changed. What began as a routine day at work became the start of an extraordinary journey, one of love, compassion, and the unbreakable bond between a boy and his horse. They've learned that family can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes, hope comes with 4 legs and a gentle heart.